Our keynote speaker today is Mr. Andy Goodman. Andy began his career as a radio and television writer, and then moved to apply his storytelling skills to preserving the environment. He believes that if you want to truly connect with someone, storytelling is the best way to do it. To teach us the art and science of storytelling, please welcome Andy Goodman.
Good morning. Good morning. It's going to sound like a cliche for me to say that I'm thrilled to be here. You know, all these speakers, I'm thrilled to be here, I'm delighted to be here, blah, blah, blah. But I've been going around the country for the past 3 or 4 years talking to nonprofits, foundations, government agencies, urging them, pleading with them, asking them to tell their stories. So to come in here today to a room this big, so many people, and to see that the last 3 words of my speech projected up on the curtains and all over the corridors, it's really, I have to say, it really is a thrill for me to be here, and I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. But you may not be so thrilled with my opening message to you today, and here it is. We have a problem when it comes to telling our stories. Now, the problem is not with our stories themselves. We have wonderful stories to tell. I've heard them all over the country. The problem is in the way we tend to tell them. We burden them with so much jargon and acronyms and technical language and statistics that they're almost unrecognizable as stories. I want to demonstrate by playing a little game with you to start off. I want to tell you a story that everybody in this room knows. There must be, I don't know, 5,000, 6,000 more people here, but I'm willing to wager that just about everybody in this room knows the story I'm about to tell. But I'm going to tell it to you the way someone from a nonprofit would tell it, complete with PowerPoint. And here's the game. Let's see how long it takes you to figure out what the story is. When you have it, don't say it. So give the other people around you a chance. Just sort of give me a little high sign like this for a moment, and I'll know you got it. Let's see how long it takes everybody to get it, okay? In reality, this story's title has 4 words, but in my version, it's called The Role of Family and Community in Mentoring Alienated Youth in the American Midwest. You ready? All right. This is the story of an at-risk youth from a blended family in the economically depressed Farm Belt. One day, she is rendered unconscious by an extreme weather event, suffering severe head trauma. Okay, shh, don't say it. When she awakens, she undertakes a long, perilous journey to a distant, mineral-based metropolitan center. And along the way, she's accompanied by 3 variously challenged and apparently homeless adults, and is pursued by a malevolent person of color, in this case green. And let's not forget those airborne primates. You all know what the story is, right? What is it? Exactly right. It's the Wizard of Oz, and there's our at-risk youth, and there's our person of color. Now, you may say, well, that's mildly amusing. You know, we're not that bad. Let me tell you something. We are that bad. Sometimes it's worse, and I want to show you an example from a real organization, a real nonprofit based in Portland, Oregon, that does wonderful work, but wasn't telling a very good story, and that's this group, Friends of the Children. Friends of the Children, and I'll use the jargon here, they work with at-risk youth starting in 1st grade, and they find these kids who really have life stacked against them, kids who are so disruptive that sometimes even the Boys and Girls Clubs will not take them in. They just feel that they're just going to be too disruptive for the organization. But Friends of the Children will work with them by matching these kids with a friend, and that's a paid professional, who will work with that child 4 hours a week in and week out, starting in 1st grade through 12th grade. We're talking about a commitment through elementary school, middle school, and high school. And thanks to the depth and scope of that intervention, they're seeing lives turn around that ordinarily might have ended up on the street or in jail or worse. You have a general sense of what they do? All right, here's the problem. When Catherine Milton was executive director of Friends of the Children, and she would go out and talk to groups to let them know what she did, whether it was policymakers or potential partners, funders, parents, whomever, she would put up her slide presentation to tell the story. And this was slide 1. And she would turn and face the screen and say, "Hello, I'm Catherine Milton from Friends of the Children. Friends of the Children is an intervention program for the most vulnerable children living in seriously high-risk environments. Our vision is one of which," and she would read you the entire slide, and we were on our way through a 60-slide presentation. I'm telling you, even a room full of atheists will say, "Oh my God." Slide 2. And that's not even my favorite slide. When she would talk to foundations, and she had to convince them that she knew what she was doing, she would put up what they call the theory of change slide. You know what a theory of change? That's the modern language for "I know what I'm doing." Here was her theory of change slide. There you go. Here, I'll give you a minute to read it. So I was called in to consult with this organization to help them tell their story better, and Catherine said to me, "I'm doing this presentation and I'm just not connecting with audiences." And so I said, "Well, let's start over. Let's throw this away. And can you just tell me the story of somebody who you've helped through your program? Just the story of one person so I can get my mind around what you do." And she said, "Well, that's easy. I'll tell you the story of TR." And she told me the story of one young man who'd been through the program. And by the time she finished that story, I'm, first of all, wiping a tear away. I said to her, "All right, Catherine, from now on, when you go out and talk to groups, start with that story." So I want to show you what became her new slide 1. And there it is. She would tell people, "This is TR, a young man in our program who we met when he was in 2nd grade. We were just getting off the ground. And we interviewed him to see what his life was like and what 1st grade had been like for him. We found out he lived in Northeast Portland in a neighborhood surrounded by crime, gangs, and drugs. His mom was on welfare. His dad, long gone. In 1st grade, the year before, he had been suspended 22 times in 1 year. But the biggest indicator of where he was at as a human being are those 3 words. They said, "What were you like in 1st grade, TR?" And he said, "I was bad." And think about it. Here's a kid, 6 or 7 or 8 years old, and already he thinks he's a bad kid. And I think at that point, the battle's almost over. So they matched him with this guy, Zach Harris. And Zach started to work with TR 4 hours a week in and week out, getting him to school on time, getting him home, doing homework with him, just being that solid adult presence that he lacked. And Zach could see right away that this was making a difference. This was really helping turn this life around. But he could also see that this wasn't enough. Because when he would bring him home, back to his neighborhood in Northeast Portland, he was basically handing him back to the gangs. And Zach could see that this was undoing everything that he was trying to accomplish. So he realized he had to go and talk to the gang members, which is what he did. And I want to read you his words because I can't say this any better. This is what Zach Harris said. "I recall going to the gang members one day. I will never forget the lump that I felt in my belly. This one gentleman had to be about 6'2". He's staring me right in the face and he said, 'May I help you?' And I said, 'Little TR right there, he's mine now. He's going to be okay. And I'd appreciate it if every day he came home that you would let him go inside the house and not hang out with the guys anymore.' And from that day, that's just what they did. They realized that this was a kid who actually had a chance. Well, that was more than 10 years ago. TR grew up to be number 2 in this picture, starting fullback for Jefferson High School, recruited by Division I colleges all around the country, offered a full scholarship. Took his SATs, didn't do so good the first time, had to take them again. Fortunately, still had his friends in his life. And finally, did well enough to get into the University of Oregon, where he's now in his junior year. And they're so proud of this young man that they put him on the cover of their newsletter, and that's him now, a man. And above his head, you can see the words, "Living a Dream." This is one life that's been turned around by Friends of the Children. Yes, give it up for them. They deserve it. As Catherine Milton will say, this is one life that's been turned around, in this case largely by athletics, but one of hundreds of lives that have been turned around also by academics, the arts, vocational training, whatever it takes. So let me ask you, do you have more of a feeling for what Friends of the Children does? Yes? That's what Catherine Milton told me, that now when she would go out and speak to groups, there was a palpable difference in the room. She could feel people understanding what she did at a gut level, getting their hearts and minds around it, and wanting to know more. And now she could give them the numbers and the charts and the metrics to show that there was more than one story to be told. But she started with the story, and it made all the difference in the world. This is why I say to you and everybody who will listen that storytelling needs to be considered a best practice. Not something that you just do before work or after work, at coffee hour, lunch break, but something you consider part of your communications toolkit. And frankly, I think it is the single most powerful communications tool you have, bar none. And that's the case I want to make for you today. When I'm finished, I want you to leave this room believing that if you haven't been storytelling in your work, you're going to start. And if you have been, you're going to do it a lot more. And I want to make that case by asking and answering 3 questions. The first is, what is it about narrative, this form of communication, that is so powerful?